You need to understand that the media is supposed to be dynamic, so is content. As tastes of people are changing, newer challenges are emerging. In the past, we didn't have issue of insurgency in Nigeria. We didn't have the pandemic. The kind of inflation we're experiencing are not there, which means the media must be sensitive to the multicultural setting of the country and the diverse nature of Nigeria. And when we talk of the media, we're talking of the staff themselves. How equipped are they? How trained are they to respond to these needs? Of course, when I talk about changing content, it means the content must now align to these realities. And don't forget the political economy of the internet, where people are now using that such platform to make money. They have blogs, and these blogs, the more the hits, the more the money they make. And so they look for information that will just bring in people, attract attention, not necessarily correct. So how do we now use stations like, let's say, NTA, FRCN, and our major newspapers that people believe in, so that they could also have the capacity to be online and also respond, and their staff can engage in investigative journalism, be able to gather proper data and work, because this is the era of data. So how equip our media organizations to generate all these things and keep them? Otherwise, some of these small media organizations that generate fake news will continue to occupy demands of particularly our young people.
I think ICIR has helped us take care of one of the major challenges in the media in Nigeria, which is actually the deficit in investigative journalism. I mean, for most of us who practice journalism before stepping out, one of the critical challenges we have, and even as consumer of news items now, is we still see a lot of challenges, deficit in terms of investigative journalism. Journalism is about unheartening things, of digging deep into issues. But thanks to ICIR, I think in the past 10 years, we've seen a lot of efforts. We've seen a lot of investment in building capacities of journalists to actually work around building their own capacity to do real investigative journalism. So we thank ICIR for that. And then probably what I'm looking for in the next 10 years is that ICIR also helps us to actually drive the media in Nigeria into realizing more that one of the critical selling points for the media is credibility. With credibility, we'll be able to do more as media in Nigeria, and that credibility is still hinged on our ability to actually serve the interests of the public by being able to do thorough investigations and digging deep into the issues that affect them.
Sustain the media, build a culture of media sustainability is to first of all get the policies right. You can't sustain a business or media as fourth estate of the realm when you operate under restrictive policies, other policies that are kind of designed to kill rather than help, rather than assist you to succeed in the business. So we need to have a policy that encourages the building of infrastructure, a policy that helps the political economy to grow. Because then, take for instance a radio station. You are supposed to operate a radio station. First of all, you pay a license fee of 15 or 20 million naira, depending on which city you're operating in. That's too much to start with. And then you start this business, you have to provide your own electricity. You have to hire security and all those things. So how much are you going to make? And you also have to struggle for advertising with the public broadcasters. So at the end of the day, how do you sustain that business? Because if you don't sustain it as a business, you really would have difficulty. You would struggle trying to use the media for the public good that it is meant for.
It's worth celebrating, I think, because the work you do is so important. I think, in this era of fancy content, so to speak, of basically a lot of non-factual content where people's attention is taken up by music, by films, by even just short content that is meant for entertainment, people do not understand that the foundational work that proper journalism does to nation building. And I think this is why organizations like the ICIR are really important. Accountability is the bedrock. Accountability is the bedrock of a democracy. You can't have a democracy if citizens cannot hold those they elect accountable. And to be able to do that, citizens rely on the fourth estate, which is the media. And the tool to do that, sometimes where the issues are complex and long and are not that easy to understand, is investigative reporting. And so the work ICIR has done in the last 10 years of sort of training people, of leading programs, of leading projects that do the same thing, its significance is pretty important.
The media had challenges about sustaining its growth, sustaining its development in society. But again, when you look at the whole of the sectors, the various sectors that make up the entire system, every sector is adversely affected. What we need at this time is a measure of creativity. I always insist on that. Look, I mean, when you have a creative mind, you make a difference. If you want to do things the same way you were doing them, you won't get far. So creativity is what is coming on, and creativity is what ICIR itself is about. The way the subject matter, the way it's handling it, the way it's being able to mobilize resources. And, well, I am on the board of ICIR. I know that one of the things that we're always talking about is this issue. In fact, that was what led to the issue of sustainability. How do you ensure that ICIR continues to grow over the years, many, many years into the future? That's always been something we talked about, and part of what we discussed at many of our meetings is not just that we mobilize resources, we also be able, within the house, to be able to set up structures that can generate resources for the organization. That is one of the reasons why the guest speaker, who is noted as a success story in the industry, is being brought to talk about the issues around sustainability. So sustainability rests on creativity, and I can assure you that for us on the board, every creative opportunity will be supported to ensure that ICIR by itself and then the rest of the media is able to survive over the years, because without the media, society cannot get far.
Something significant. You know, the most important thing is having an organization like this building capacity.
Because we actually cooked it together at a certain level. And I was one of the very few people that the executive director spoke to. And so we cooked it together. And we knew it would grow. But we never imagined it would have grown as this in just 10 years. And so it's always good to support something laudable. One of the reasons propelling us, or that propelled me then, was because this is our country. Fine, some of us have had the opportunities of living and working outside the country. But the reality is that Nigeria is not going away. So even if you go away. And so it's a little way of contributing our own quota to sustaining the democracy or developing Nigeria. And you see, at certain levels, our oxygen is corruption. So even if you are not going to leave a dent, just leave a scratch on corruption. And a little droplet, as they say, makes the ocean. So we know that we are doing our best based on what we have. It's wonderful to see it clocking 10 years.
You know, I come from a country where we've come to value the role that investigative journalists play. You know, had it not been for the investigative journalists that we have back home in South Africa, I'm quite certain that our country would have gone south faster than it has. You know, so we've come to say congratulations to Dayo and the team, and to wish them well, you know, for the next 10 years that lies ahead of this organization. So I think one is understanding the stage we're in and accepting that. You know, the media company of yesteryears is gone. It's never coming back. In my view, which is something that I'm going to argue inside, we've got to adopt a two-pronged strategy, if I'm making sense. On the one hand, you are protecting your traditional business, well, that is important. We, most of us, we started as news businesses. So I would say protect what you have, invest in that, strengthen it. The news business is not dying. Consumers are just consuming media differently. So they still want the content, they still want the news content. So protect that, whether you are a radio station or you are a newspaper business, protect that. There are things that you have to do to protect your traditional business.
I think it's the primary principles that are needed, because we are living in very tough times, but as they say, tough times do not last forever. But people who are able to innovate can outlast the tough times. So what the media needs to do, especially since we are talking about the legacy media that has a lot of investment, that has brick and mortar offices, printing presses, and what have you, I think they need to scale back and also think of where do they need partners, where do they not have to be there. Because in some societies, you can even have one reporter that is reporting for more than one channel. I mean, not every issue is an exclusive issue. If we get back to investigative reporting, yes, it takes resources, but with partnership, I think that could be overcome. Even in running the business, if you go up the hill where ASO Radio is, you'll be amazed to see that there are many transmitters of many radios in Abuja. They pull together so that they don't each have to own a generator to power their transmitters. So these are some of the ways that you could do. I mean, you could survive these tough times and then ensure that the little you have, you husband it very well, so that at the end of the day, it takes you very far.
It's governments and government agencies and officials. So increasingly, it looks like government and government officials are sensitive to the kind of journalism we do, which is to hold government accountable. And they are coming after us. It's censorship, because what it means is that my reporter who is called by the DSS and, come, this, that, and they are harassing him. He's a young person. Probably he doesn't have the grit of somebody like me or the guts of somebody like me. And so that could, affect him. It might discourage him from doing the kind of journalism that we want him to do. So it's really self-censorship. I couldn't say that, but I'll say here, one of the biggest disincentives to our work is the recent release of convicted politicians. 2 governors. I did stories on these 2 incidentally. I remember my story on Darie was called The Jolly Luther of Taraba. Now, in one fell swoop, with that singular action, what the Buhari-led government has done is to upstage the entire anti-corruption campaign of the last 10-20 years. Because what the government has told us is that EFCC, you are just wasting your time. If you prosecute somebody, you send him to jail, we're going to release him. ICPC, the same thing. Critical media, don't bother your head. If you write, they prosecute and all that.
One of the hallmarks of the ICIR is investigations. And the organization has actually distinguished itself when it comes to investigations, verification, which is actually what journalism should be all about. So that's basically what I know about ICIR, excellence in journalism.
ICIR has been a trailblazer in making sure critical reporting and accountability reporting is a household name in terms of, aside from just doing the reporting themselves, empowering newsroom, improving the capacity of journalists. So yes, there are so many things that ICIR have done significantly in Nigeria and how it has impacted the media industry.
Mandates us to hold our leaders to account, to allow them to report to the people from time to time. But what we have seen in the media landscape for many years is that journalism kind of report the statement of the ruling elite and the business elite. We take the statement of those people back to the people. But the actions of the people are hardly reported. Because the people in government, what they want is to have some of those actions covered. They will always try as much as possible to cover those actions that they carry out while in government. But what we do, or what we are supposed to do, is to uncover what they do. We have not been doing that very well. And that was a gap that the ICIR saw over the years. I said, hey, what we are going to be doing is to ensure that we do the kind of journalism that is going to bring the actions of the government people to exposure.
The International Center for Investigative Reporting, ICIR, celebrating 10 years of promoting good governance.